Anyone else for public testimony today? And again, we added slots for tomorrow as well. Let's come back.
We're waiting just a couple of minutes. We're having a little trouble with
We
an,
just got
oh,
booked up.
maybe we got up. Well, just, yeah.
Clicker workshop.
Did it go away?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, I think we're ready to get going here now. Thank you. It's good to see all of you. Appreciate the value and importance I know that each of you put on the conversations we're about to have. So thank you for making this a priority in your day and for being here. I'm Katie Dempsey. We're joined by a very willing committee who's anxious to hear the reports that you bring to us today. And so first up, we have Director Ryan from Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. And we started just a couple of minutes late, so you tell us what we need to know and we'll open it up for questions after that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I will preface all these comments by letting you know that I have a week and a half old at home. I now have a cold, and I don't have my good shoes because I figured out on the way in here that my cobbler is closed on Wednesdays. I'll let you the cobbler or the kid? I'd like the cobbler to move a little faster. No, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present. Next month will mark my 1-year anniversary at GVRA. I want to run through before I actually get into the presentation. I know Chair Dempsey is familiar with some of the goings on at my agency. Y'all probably have not gone as in depth as she has. Shortly after Governor Kemp came into office, he asked me to move from the commissionership of the Department of Administrative Services, where I had been serving, to take over the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. He, along with the legislature, and many of you who were here, understood that there were some serious concerns with what was going on at the agency. No one, I don't think, in any sort of public position had a true understanding, though, of just how bad things were. I can tell you 11 months in, it's as bad as I can describe it to you, and I've probably got constituents and clients sitting behind me who will tell you that they've lived through it for years, and it's pretty bad, pretty horrific. Shortly after I got there, and I'm talking matter of days, not even weeks, and after some conversations with the legislature about the top heaviness of the agency as it pertained to the administrative functions there, I brought in the consulting firm Accenture to do sort of a top-down review of our administrative functions, because it's an agency where truly nothing was working. What most of y'all will hear from clients are complaints from the vocational rehabilitation program, but I can tell you that everything from HR to finance to IT was not functioning the way it should in a normal organization. So, and I also had Accenture look at the Georgia Industries for the Blind, because I was concerned about their financial position, and some organizational changes that had previously been made down there that led to some pretty bad outcomes for that part of the agency. Accenture came back with a full 111-page report. Included in that report was sort of a breakdown of everything that they agreed with me was wrong with the agency, and then some, because they had a rather large team to operate with, more than just me. As a result of that, I'm now about 2/3 of the way through a full reorganization of all of the administrative functions of the organization. I had tasked Accenture with reorging based on a $195,000 cut that the legislature made in the 2019 session, combined with our very generous federal grant from the U.S. Department of Education. That's anywhere from a $750,000 to $950,000 cut that we took last session, because all of you rightly viewed the agency as top-heavy. It was spending too much money on administrative functions, and frankly, those functions weren't even working. So that gave me all the impetus I needed to do a reduction in force, and I'll get into some of that in a second here, and a reorganization of the functions. What that means is we went from 114 seats in admin. We're going down to 85. If you hired straight to the midpoint for all of the positions that we're then filling with new folks and some folks who've been asked to rejoin the organization through a competitive hiring process, initially that savings was pegged by Accenture at being in the roughly $1.3 million range. I think we may be higher than that, and that's before the current budget. So I've approached this from day one with very much a reorganization mindset, because the agency is woefully bad at serving the clients that it is tasked to serve. And the unfortunate thing for everyone who's not a client here but who's a taxpayer, it's still spending millions of dollars. It's just not delivering the services that it should. So I'm prefacing all of that, and again, I'm a little bit sleep deprived, so I apologize if this is not quite as concise or as punchy as it would normally be. But I'm going to run through my slides here to go through amended state fiscal year 20 with y'all. And I'm happy to answer any questions y'all have, obviously, while we're going. You can wait till the end, whatever you would like. One of the most, I laugh about this, but really I shouldn't. One of the most damning things that Accenture found in their report, and that I realized on day one, is when I got to GVRA on February 18th of 2019, no one knew how many people worked at GVRA. I'll let that one hang out there for a minute. It took us longer than it should have, and a new HR director, quite frankly, to figure out that our current FTE is 1,150. As I said, we are about 2/3 of the way through a full top-to-bottom reorganization of our administrative functions. We've got 52 positions filled right now. 33 of them are vacant. Among the vacancies is my CIO position, as well as the Director of Facilities and Property Management. We've got a new HR director. We've got a new general counsel. We've got a new CFO. I've got a new director of planning and budget who will join us from the city of Atlanta on Monday. I figure if she can handle their budget, she should be just fine with mine. And so within vocational rehabilitation, which is our largest public-facing portion of the organization and the one that more than likely you will hear from constituents about, we've got 314 people in seats right now. That's a bit low. We've got turnover at the moment. It's not a good place to work. It's not good for our clients, but right now it's not a good place to work as far as many of our field officers are concerned. That's most acute in the Atlanta Metro office, but the Atlanta Metro office is where about 50% of the disability community in Georgia lives. So that's a problem. Of the 314, we did break out for you 2 crucial positions for us. One are our certified rehabilitation counselors and one are our career specialists. We don't have to get too far into the weeds on this, but what y'all need to understand is, and the easiest way that I can work this in my mind, your CRCs, your counselors, are essentially like general practitioners in the medical field. The career specialists are like nurse practitioners. They can do almost everything. Those career specialists can do almost everything that a CRC can do, except there are a few things that they can't do. And so the 91 counselors are supported by those career specialists, but the caseload, quite frankly, is incredibly high right now among the counselors who are tasked with doing some of the most crucial functions for our staff. I'm going to dig into the numbers here. I'm not going to read everything on the slide because y'all can read all of this, but I do want to start by highlighting the Business Enterprise Program. Business Enterprise Program is our blind vendor community. Y'all actually have a blind vendor who is working in this building right now in y'all's snack shop. We've also got one in Sloppy Floyd where I am, one in the Capitol. There are, let's see, running through which one's here. We've got 65 blind vendors, 62 that are operating statewide. And there's not much of a change as far as the governor's budget is concerned with the BEP program. The reduction of $11,738 in state funding is magnified by our U.S. Department of Education grant, as I said. So the total fund cut that you will see here is $55,000. So that's the state dollars then matched with the federal dollars. We will realize that vacancy. We realize that by maintaining a vacancy within the program through the remainder of the state fiscal year, and I do not foresee any issues surrounding doing that. Again, I apologize for the cold. All right, so the next slide that you'll see here, as soon as I advance it, here we go. Department administration. You'll see that DOAS has, we've received some additional appropriations in the governor's budget for some administered self-insurance programs. Our telecommunications reduction is based primarily on a cell phone reclamation project that I went on within admin. These little devices that all of us have in our hands are a little bit expensive when you initially buy them, even when you buy them in bulk, as the state of Georgia does. We're not a GETS agency, by the way. We're not a Georgia Enterprise Technology System agency. But the plans are actually what really kill you. When I got to GVRA, everyone was getting a cell phone. And so what we did is we went and we figured out which roles within admin before we even went into the reorganization actually needed to have a phone, who needed to be reached outside of business hours, who was out away from their desk for business purposes. And we made a reduction, and the way we pegged that was it's actually about a $60,000 savings per year right now in removing those cell phones. The reduced funds for travel. This is across the agency. I'm going to give you a number right now that's actually kind of shocking. This is across the agency. It's not just admin, but you see the admin portion of it here. The agency, when I got there halfway through state fiscal year 19, was on pace to spend $2.6 million on travel. That's $2.6 million. Some of it is necessary. Our field staff in particular, a lot of times they need to physically meet our clients where they are. And so we have clients with mobility issues, and some of that is traveling that's appropriate. But a lot of that, quite frankly, was folks who wanted to go to national conferences, and the travel was excessive. $2.6 million for a staff at the time that was around 1,300 is far too high. So I've put in place a moratorium on all out-of-state travel at the moment, and I'm happy to say that we ended state fiscal year 19 only spending about $2 million on travel. So we ended up about 600,000 below where the estimate was, but I didn't put that in place until March or April of last year. So this is the administrative side of that you see right here, and the administrative staff was traveling. Another area where they were traveling that Accenture highlighted and that I had heard about colloquially was, for example, our IT staff was not communicating properly with HR, and HR was not communicating with IT. So instead of delivering a work computer to, say, the field office in Valdosta ahead of a new hire in that area, HR would not communicate properly when that person was coming. They may not have even told IT they were coming at all. And so then an IT field tech would have to leave Atlanta, drive down to Valdosta, and hand deliver a laptop for something that could have been easily planned and communicated within the agency. When I say it's bad, guys, I mean it. It's bad. The next line item that you see there is to reduce funds to realize savings from program reorganization and personal restructuring initiatives. That's the amount that I said we had targeted for state fiscal year 20, the roughly 1.3 million, going from an FTE in butts and seats and vacancies of 114 in admin down to that 85. I think we will actually surpass that. And then we're also doing, so the next line item is reducing funds for contractual services by 150,000. We are taking a deep dive look at the contracting process across the agency. There's been no oversight of it, quite frankly. The financial controls have not been there. My new CFO, I'll brag on her a little bit, Monica Bradshaw, came from SAO. Her background is in financial controls. We've got a brand new procurement operation. We're combining procurement functions from within admin, and then we had a second procurement shop in VR, which makes absolutely no sense from an organizational standpoint and leads to massive inefficiencies. I actually think that $150,000 will be pretty easy to save when we re-envision how we actually contract at GVRA. Click over to the next slide. The next slide that you will see is for the disability adjudication services. This program is 100% federally funded. They're primarily located out in Stone Mountain, but they have several other locations. They are state employees, but they are 100% federally funded, as is the program. Their job is to make disability determinations for Social Security disability. So you will not see anything other than the total funds that come in from the federal government here. There's no state match for that program. Next up, I mentioned them as Georgia Industries for the Blind. Advancing here. Georgia Industries for the Blind also does not currently receive any state or federal funding. The way that they are supposed to operate is to sell goods to manufacture or resell goods and make a profit. I do have some concerns about the sustainability there. It is a program that used to get state funding back, looks like, to my eye at least, back before the Great Recession. It got an allotment each year. And I think probably the legislature and the Purdue administration and into the Deal administration decided not to continue that. So they're functioning right now on sale of goods. As I said, they maintain a reserve. I do have some concerns about that reserve, but I'm currently working with the governor's office, with OPB, and the National Industries for the Blind on some business development for them. They've been very heavily focused on manufacturing of paper goods, which is a bit problematic because their primary client for those paper goods is the federal government. As everyone knows, the federal government is, working more on a telework, or they're working more toward a telework system, which means fewer people are in the office actually physically using paper binders. On top of that, the federal government is doing what all public entities should be doing, and it's placing an emphasis on digitization. So if you digitize, you don't need paper. I'm hoping my staff listen to that too, because as far as GVRA is concerned, I've never seen an entity that uses as much paper and can take what could be a digitized process and either keep it paper or turn it back into paper. It's terrifying to look at, But again, it's part of Accenture's recommendations, and part of what I view as the future of GVRA is to massively digitize, hopefully on the way to automation, because you can't automate what isn't digitized. Anyway, again, I apologize. I'm rambling a little bit here. I think that's probably the cold, not the lack of sleep. Moving on to the next slide. You will see vocational rehabilitation. Again, this is our largest program by dollar amount and also the largest by head count internally. You see an increase there, a slight increase for Department of Administrative Services insurance programs. You see another reduction there that's similar to the administrative functions as far as the telecommunications are concerned. We're doing the same thing with VR that we did with admin. We've got folks in the field who, quite frankly, don't need to have a mobile device for work purposes, and we're reclaiming those. As I said, we've got a lot of vacancies in VR right now. That's most acute in Atlanta. I want to talk about VR just a little bit more broadly, just to give you an idea of sort of what we're looking at here. The program's broken, and it has been for quite some time. I think it was viewed by the community as not working properly. And back in 2012, as many of you who are here remember, the legislature and the Deal administration folded the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation out of the Department of Labor and made it a standalone agency, and then attached it to the Department of Human Services. That didn't go well, to put it mildly. And I'm sure there are people who are probably staring at the back of my head wondering why it's taken me a year to come to that conclusion. It has not. I came to that conclusion about 2 days into the job. What it is taking is a significant amount of time to try and reform that program. So I've gone back to Accenture. I brought Accenture back in because now they have a feel for our business, they have a feel for our clients, they have a feel for our staff. And I'm expecting actually on Monday another detailed report, couple 100 pages long, which should be fun to read on 4 hours of sleep that I'm getting right now, but another detailed report into how Accenture recommends we re-envision providing VR services across the state of Georgia. I imagine that much like with the administrative recommendations, there will be an organizational/structural component to it. They will suggest changing the organization in some way. I don't want to presuppose it, but I imagine that they're going to say that there's probably unnecessary levels. What that means is that paperwork and literal paperwork, not digitization, but literal paperwork is probably moving through too many parts of the organization. It's getting lost. It's not traceable. But they will probably make a recommendation along those lines that we need to try and either reassign people or possibly to eliminate roles and then move people into new ones based on layers that are probably too complex and too deep. I'm not sitting here. I'm truly not going to sit here. And again, the disability community may take some issue with this. I'm not going to say that our field staff are necessarily the actual problem here. Some of them are. But in general, my experience with our counselors is that many of them are in the organization for the right reason. They want to help individuals with disabilities gain and sustain employment. The system that they're working within is massively broken. Because HR is so ineffective, traditionally has been, and I've got a rock star, her name's Jennifer Statham. I've got a rock star HR director that I brought over from the Department of Early Child Care and Learning. Amy Jacobs says she's not mad at me for poaching her, but I know she truly is. Jennifer's that good. Right now, out in the field, GVRA is taking 6 to 8 months to hire field staff. As an economy, we're at full employment. So no one's waiting around for 6 to 8 months to get a job with the state of Georgia that pays $36,300 a year. Most of them have found something else. So the unfortunate thing there is, and I'm not picking on individuals here, I'm speaking more broadly, 6 to 8 months, you're not getting your first choice, you're not getting your second, maybe you're getting your third, you're probably getting your fourth or your fifth. So you're bringing someone into the organization who may be motivated, may even have a family member or a close friend who has a disability who wants to come into the organization for the right reason, but it's maybe not the person who had the skill set coming in that you necessarily wanted. And this is why I went to the administrative functions for how to rebuild the organization first, because they truly they form the foundation of any organization. Many of you probably have noticed this in your outside employment as well. So you've brought in the wrong person, but okay. You can train someone if they've got the right education background. You can train someone to do the job. Well, and I think this primarily happened under the Department of Labor. They loosened, and along with the federal government, they loosened the requirements for who can actually become a rehab counselor, who can become a career assistant. And instead of being in a related field, they said you could take anyone. So Dr. Christine Fleming, who is brilliant and is our director of vocational rehabilitation, who rejoined the agency a whole 30 days before I did. She and I, although from very different backgrounds, both of our parents were concerned that we were going to go to college and get degrees in underwater basket weaving. We did not, but that's the degree that we joked together. You could have a degree in underwater basket weaving, and technically GVRA will hire you to do this job. So you've hired the wrong person. They don't have the educational background. All right, so we're starting to run into some problems here. The third problem is the agency has not done any appreciable training of its frontline staff since 2012. I can't tell you why that hasn't happened. What I can tell you is that structurally, they pulled the training that should have been going on in the field. They pulled the training unit back into Atlanta in a failed reorganization that happened back in 2015 or so. They pulled that training unit back in, and they just didn't train the field. Christine Fleming was the training director before she left to get her PhD at Auburn. The same training that she had designed before she left is still sitting there and has not been updated and not been delivered. So you got the wrong person, they don't have the educational background, and they haven't been trained. All right, we're starting to run into some serious roadblocks here for how we deliver service. The other side of that, the final sort of nail in the coffin, so to speak, is that the caseload is very, very high for our counselors. This is very important work that they're doing, but there's a very personal aspect to it. You need to sit across the table from an individual with a disability to talk to them about what their career goal is, to establish, frankly, whether that's a realistic career goal. We all want to be neurosurgeons, but that may not be an appropriate job for everyone. Certainly not for me. I'm not a rocket scientist either. Right now, I'm a little bit concerned that we don't have enough counselors because of other organizational changes that were made, taking resources away from the straight field services and putting them in other parts of the organization. So I'm hopeful that Accenture, and they are all very smart individuals, I'm hopeful that they will see that too, and that they will help make some recommendations for how we may be able to move resources within the organization to bring them in and actually make them frontline staff again. So what you see here, this is a very big number as far as the reduced funds to reflect savings from vacant positions. People have opted in this environment, they have opted not to work at GVRA. They have left. Part of it is me. I will claim responsibility for that. We've hired some of the wrong people. They've looked at me, they've looked at my administration and said, I don't want to be a part of what that guy is selling. If I do that, it's going to mean I have to get up in the morning and I'm going to have to do my job. I can't hide behind a failed system anymore because this is someone who's coming in and acknowledging that the system doesn't work. I think he may actually fix it, and I don't want to deal with that. I'm fine with those people leaving, I got to be honest. Unfortunately, we've lost some good staff too. I think they've heard the song and dance before. I'm the third commissioner in, I think, 5 years. They've heard the song and dance before, and they said, no, I'm not buying it this time. I've heard it before, didn't happen. And so they have chosen to leave. That's unfortunate because some of those folks, I think, if they stayed, are going to see truly a new day for vocational rehabilitation within the state of Georgia. But we've got some really, really dedicated staff who, even in a failed system, even with very little support from the previous administration, not gubernatorial, the previous executive administration from GVR, even though they have not gotten the support that they need to do the job, they've stayed. I want those people to stay because I'm confident that we can build a system that is going to work better for our clients, and those folks are going to want to come to work every day because it's just going to be a better place to work. Unfortunately, we've been shedding staff, and that's been most acute in the metro area. And again, as some of the folks from the disability community are probably staring at the back of my head right now, they've lived through it. I'm talking about phone calls not returned for months or even sometimes years. I'm talking about emails not returned. I'm talking about folks with disabilities physically going to a location and being told they couldn't meet with their counselor. Now, maybe that the counselor is totally swamped and it may actually have made more sense for them to schedule an appointment, but that's not acceptable. That's entirely unacceptable. They're taxpayers. We're all taxpayers. that's not the level of service that any of us should ever encounter from a public entity. It's not frankly, it's not an organization that I want to be associated with, so we're going to fix it. But what you're seeing here right now with this big number, $4.2 million, largely reflects vacancies that we have at the moment. We're down on staff. We realize that it's making things actually worse as far as service delivery is concerned right now. I didn't actually think that was possible. I thought that the service delivery was about as bad as it could have possibly gotten before. It's actually a little bit worse right now because we are down on staff. So I'm confident again that my good friends now at Accenture will come back with some recommendations about how we can move resources within the organization, because again, this is an organization with a very generous federal grant, especially for, I haven't gone over this, but our Section 110 grant from the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the U.S. Department of Education gives us $3.77 of federal tax dollar for every $1 of match that we provide them. Doesn't just have to be state dollars. It can come from other sources. But we have a very generous grant. The agency, just quite frankly, for about as long as it has existed, has spent a lot of money doing really stupid stuff, and it needs to stop. So I'm here to tell you right now that it is going to stop. And I believe that's actually the end of it. I'm sure I've probably created some questions here as a result of all this.
Thank you. Thank you for the good, detailed explanation. Representative Oliver?
May I have a copy of your first Accenture report? Is that a public
Absolutely.
document?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You want the big one or the executive summary and the org charts?
I want both. I've sat at a number of different budget hearings. I've never seen an ED say his department is woefully bad, spending millions delivering no service. It is massively broken. I'm trying to decide whether that's a good or bad thing. And I'm frankly a little unnerved, and I'm assuming this is a strategy in coordination with the governor.
Sure.
That you are saying these on TV and here today, these fairly damning things about the services you're delivering. I'm curious.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
So this is my 5th job with the state of Georgia. At one point, it was 5 jobs in 4 years. Now it's 5 jobs in 5 years. This is the 3rd agency that I've run. My first agency that I ran was the Georgia Student Finance Commission, which all of you know, everyone loves because of the Hope Scholarship. And then I was the DOAS commissioner. Georgia Student Finance is one of the best run organizations in this entire state. It's small, it's agile, it's got a massive budget because of Hope, but it's small, it's agile, it's got dedicated staff who come to work every day wanting to do the job and taking pride in the work that they do. That was a truly fantastic way to start my service as an agency head to the state of Georgia and to the people of Georgia. As DOAS commissioner, it's back office. You've got procurement, you've got risk management. I know that's not this committee, but I'm sure you've worked with DOAS before. It gives you a fantastic view of the state enterprise, of all the agencies as they're interacting. The good ones, the ones who are struggling a little bit, gives you a fantastic view. My mom thinks that I can't hold down a job now because it's 5 jobs in 4 years. And so she asked me, all right, so what is this four-letter agency that you now work in, that you work for, or that you run? And I said, well, I'm in the carpet business. She kind of paused and said, what? I said, well, I'm in the carpet business. I'm ripping up all the carpets and I'm finding some really, really bad stuff, but I can't fix it until I know about it. So I'm ripping up all the carpets. This is why the governor sent me here. 2 jobs ago, I've got my friends from DHS behind me. 4 jobs ago, I was the director of the integrated eligibility system when it moved from the Department of Community Health to the Department of Human Services. We had a great partner in Deloitte on that, but the reason that it moved is that it was cratering. I'm happy to sit here to say, I've got John Anderson sitting behind me from DFACS. I think he's still at DFACS. He bounces back and forth too. And my friends from DHS, it's a functional program right now. So I have done stuff like this before for the state of Georgia. I will also tell you, this is so bad, I'm not smart enough to cover it up. So we might as well identify.
Your comments anticipated my question of trying to figure out whether you're trying to convince me that you're not just an anti-government guy, that you don't just dismiss government. You're trying to convince me that there's good government and this is unusually bad. And
Absolutely.
since I've been sitting at this table for a good while, being told that vocational rehab is doing better, serving more people, et cetera, I'm a little disappointed myself that I've believed all that, which has given me some more things to think about. Let me ask you this question, and then I'll stop, if I may.
Sure.
If I may have one more question. Does Accenture answer the question about whether a good percentage of the activity from any of your employees are really producing results for a disabled Georgian? Does it answer that question?
So I don't have the VR assessment yet. I think it would be difficult to say that under the current system that our staff are working under, that it was successful.
Successful in terms of helping individual people.
With disabilities gain sustained employment.
Right.
The rate is, it's low two-figure. You're in the probably 20% range for clients who are actually ending up in any given year sustained employment. And the Rehabilitation Services Administration, the feds, view it as employment that's sustained for 90 days or longer. That we get to close that as
so
an
there
individual.
is a measurement to that.
Yes.
And it's 20% success.
It's around 20%. It's actually frankly, it may have been lower than that in FY19. Christine could maybe yell it over my shoulder really quickly.
And is that consistent with national averages?
No, it's below the national average. And this is and I'm trying to figure out how to artfully say this. It's a hard job.
It's a very hard
It's a hard job. It's something that you have to come to with passion and to want to make a difference. And I think we have those people. But the system as it is currently designed does not work. It doesn't work for the clients. It doesn't work for our staff as well.
Thank you, Representative Oliver. If you think of any more questions, don't hesitate to punch your button. Again, I know this is a little hard to wrap our heads around because many of us have sat here for years being told there were improvements. So we've got to kind of get through that. And I think the report will add some validity and some understanding to that. Chairman Hogan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. When I was a vocational rehabilitation counselor years ago, this sounds like a different agency than I work for. And do you have a training program at the University of Georgia anymore for vocational rehabilitation counselors?
I'm trying to remember if UGA is one of them. So Georgia State, what was that, Christine? No. So Georgia State is a primary feeder. Auburn, Mercer University. Sorry for saying the Auburn word. That's where Christine came from with her PhD, by the way. No, there is not one at UGA.
They had a master's program at one time at the University of Georgia, and I think it was mostly funded by the feds. Very good program. The caseload for rehabilitation counselors now is what?
It's about 300 to 400 per counselor.
It was about 300 when I worked there. But the salary, you said $36,000 a year?
36,300 for a career for a counselor, and about 33,000 for the career assistants.
How can you hire anybody to work for those wages?
Well, it's easier in rural Georgia, I will tell you that. Your dollar
But
goes
rural
a bit,
Georgia
goes a bit
deserves
further.
better than that. Those salaries are low.
They are.
I think so. Getting out doing what these rehabilitation counselors are doing and trying to accomplish. I commend you on what you're trying to do, and I wish you all luck in the world. Is there a possibility of combining vocational rehabilitation with the labor department or something?
That's y'all's call, not mine. It was folded out from labor in 2012.
Right, and it was one time under the Department of Education when I worked for them, under Superintendent Nix. That was a long time ago. But it seems to me like there needs to be a lot of reorganization, or you need to go with an agency that's already there and doing a good job, and making a lot of changes. And the people with disabilities deserve a lot better than what's being provided to them. I can assure you that. And it just makes me cringe to think about what this agency has become and what I was used to when I worked as a rehabilitation counselor down in rural Georgia. I was in Savannah at one time and down in Glenn County, Brunswick, Georgia, as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. And I don't like what I'm hearing, to be honest with you. And thank you for making the presentation today.
Sure. Yeah, it's up to y'all and it's up to the governor, quite frankly. If y'all wanted to make a decision and send it back to the Department of Labor, that's a power the legislature and the governor has. I will say that a lot of time and effort will have now been expended to stand up an agency that I think is going to have a phenomenal back office. And as I said before, that forms the foundation of any successful organization. The programs that we have, so VR, Division of Adjudication Services, all those programs are the pretty house that you build on it. But as all of you know, if the foundation is not solid, that house is going to crumble. So that's why I went there first. And I do think that we are going to have an absolutely phenomenal back office. The question now is doing what we're doing is getting another assessment from Accenture to look at VR in particular and build upon a solid foundation, a new vision for how we deliver VR services within the state. I share your assessment. I've spoken to VR counselors who have retired and left, and it doesn't even actually resemble the agency that got folded out in 2012 either. It has truly, this is as close to a failed agency as I think we can get in the state of Georgia. Good news there for me is there's only one way, and that's up.
Well, the people that you're providing services to deserve a lot better than what you're delivering.
I agree. That's
Thank
why
you.
I'm here.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, thank you so much. And I am well aware of how hard you've been working, and heartbreaking agency that you were handed, where truly we did all feel that things were very different, and it took this deep dive. So I thank you and Governor Kemp both for taking the bold steps that take a little bit longer, but to make sure to get the evidence-based discovery that we really need to try to rebuild. So thank you. We will we'll be in touch again, I'm sure, and if there are any other questions that from the committee, we'll get them to you. Thank you so much, Director.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Just to the folks from the disability community who are here, who may be working online, or who may be watching online, trust me, I understand how bad it is and how bad it has been. I do not have a magic wand to fix something like this overnight. I wish, as a not just a taxpayer, but as a human being, I wish it never got to this point. But the bottom line is this is where we are, and this is going to take some significant time and significant effort to get this right. I'm confident we can do it, but it's not going to happen overnight, and it has not thus far. But we are, I believe, making progress, and I'm very excited for next week to have this assessment in my hands, and I'd be happy to share it with all of you as well once we get it. This is not something, like I said, I'm in the carpet business. I'm ripping them all up. I'm not trying to hide anything here. I'm trying to call it like I see it, because that's the only way I know to actually fix what's wrong.
Thank you. Would everyone be interested in getting an electronic copy, perhaps, of these documents to
You don't want me to do the GVRA thing and print it out and deliver it to all of you by hand?
Please don't.
Okay.
Why don't we send it to Michael,
Sure.
and then he can forward it to all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you for your forthrightness. Okay. So next, we are going to hear from Commissioner Crittenden from Department of Human Services. Thank you so much to you and your team. I know you have others with you too to present.
Good afternoon, Chairman Dempsey and committee members. For those of you who I have not met before, although looking, I think I know everybody up there, my name is Robin Crittenden, and I'm Commissioner of the Department of Human Services. And I'm here today to present the Governor's recommendation for the Department's amended fiscal year 2020 budget. I have with me several members of my team, but specifically I have our CFO, Demetrius Taylor, and I'm also joined by Chief of Staff Geralda Hines and Deputy Commissioner Ashley Fielding. As some of you may recall from the presentation last week, DHS has about $1.7 billion allocated to protect and serve Georgia's vulnerable populations. When you add the budgets of our attached entities, the total for the department's fiscal year 2020 budget allocation is $1.9 billion. Today, I will cover the Governor's amended fiscal year 2020 recommendations for DHS and two of our attached entities, the Council on Aging and the Family Connection Partnership. I will not cover the recommendations related to DFACS. Director Rawlings will do that afterwards. Overall, for DHS, the Governor has recommended an amended fiscal year 2020 budget of $804.2 million in state funds. This amounts to an overall reduction of $25.4 million in expenditures, which includes a 4% reduction in state spending. The department will realize a savings in personnel costs from employee turnover in several program areas. DHS will not hold nor eliminate any positions. The savings will come from the time a position is vacated until the time when the position is filled, and we call this vacancy lapse. Reductions of this kind are as follows. $1.2 million in savings, for our Division of Child Support Services, $1.2 million in savings. In Departmental Administration, $896,695 in savings. This excludes vacancies in DFACS administration. In Elder Abuse Investigations and Prevention, $956,000 in savings. And for residential child care licensing, $5,741. The Governor has also recommended the department reduce travel and conference expenses. These proposed travel reductions do not include day-to-day travel required for staff to perform basic job functions. They are efficiencies related to outside conferences and other non-essential travel. The recommendations are as follows. For our Division of Child Support Services, a reduction of $19,930. In Departmental Administration, a reduction of $22,456. In Elder Abuse Investigations and Prevention, a reduction of $1,300. And for Elder Support Services, a reduction of $497. The Governor has also proposed two reductions in departmental administration for contractual services, including $880,000 for contracts in our Office of Information Technology and $164,800 for the Georgia Memory Net project. The Governor has recommended replacing $430,000 in state spending with social service block grant funds for two initiatives within our Division of Aging Services. These initiatives have previously been funded across three program areas. The first initiative focuses on senior hunger, and the second provides grants to senior centers for innovative programming. The Governor's recommendations for DHS include reductions for the Council on Aging and the Family Connection Partnership, both of which are attached to the department for administrative purposes. I will briefly cover those recommendations before I conclude my presentation. The governor has made one recommendation for the Council on Aging, which is led by Executive Director Kathy Floyd, and that's a reduction of $12,451 in their fiscal year 2020 expenditures. This accounts for savings in personnel costs resulting from employee turnover, which I've previously referred to as the vacancy lapse. The governor's recommendations for Family Connection Partnership, which is led by Executive Director Gay Smith, are as follows. A reduction of $318,000 in spending, which will result in a $2,000 decrease for each county collaborative, and a $56,000 reduction in technical assistance to the counties. That concludes the governor's recommendations for the Department of Human Services amended fiscal year 2020 budget. Before I leave, I want to encourage you to visit our website so that you can take a look at our annual report for fiscal year 19 and the Division of Aging Services, Just the Facts. Both are publications that talk about our programming and our accomplishments as well as the impact we've had during the last fiscal year. And you can find them on our website. I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you. Representative Oliver.
Last year, we appropriated funds for additional elder abuse caseworkers. Did we appropriate funds for 6 or 12? I can't remember.
Let me see.
17?
It was
maybe?
a total of 17.
How many of those positions were filled?
They were all filled.
So the vacancy positions in elder abuse now do not include those funds, those positions?
No. So what we're using to figure out the lapse is, let's say Demetrius, and I hope he wouldn't, said he was leaving on February 1st. It will take us roughly 2 to 3 months to fill the position between advertising, interviewing, doing background checks, all those kinds of things. Until we fill that position, that's the savings.
I understand that, and that's always been true.
Yes.
Typically, a 1, 2, or 3% lapse has always been something you can count on.
Right.
What that reflects to me is, setting aside the workforce issues, which are huge, is your HR department.
Well,
Are you having the same HR issues that Mr. Voc Rehab is about not being able to fill positions?
we do have issues with trying to fill positions. We have actually, this last 2 years, moved our hiring system to a new system, HR Pass, and we have gone from taking over 6 months to fill a position to taking between 2 and 3. And 2 and 3 is really more realistic by the time you advertise for 2 weeks, then you review the resumes, you bring people in for interviews. Sometimes we have to do 2 interviews, 2 rounds, go through them, decide on the offer, then we do extensive, that takes a little longer, background checks, and then make your offer, and then the person has to give notice before they can start the job. So we're pleased with having brought that time down. We worked very hard to do that.
That's progress.
If I could ask too, just kind of a little bit of a follow-up on that. So that is, in those positions with delayed start dates, that includes the public guardianship. I think there were 5 of those, and these 17 adult protective caseworkers, right?
Well, the delayed start dates are not specific to those. We worked very hard when we got those positions from you all to fill those, if not July 1, within the month of July, to fill those specific positions that were funded. Where we're seeing the vacancy lap is just our normal coming and going throughout the year.
Okay, and when we revisit, last year particularly when we looked at this, we were trying to bring us more into compliance with the national standard. Are we making some progress in that, Commissioner Crittenden?
We do make progress with it. So for a state fiscal year, based on the budgeted positions, we would have had a caseload ratio in APS of 1 to 27. And for state fiscal year through December 2019 right now, we're at a ratio of 1 to 26. And for public guardianship, we last year had a ratio of 1 to 26. And to date now for through December 2019, we're at 1 to 24.
Okay. Grateful that you're making some progress on that. Let's see, next we have a question from Chairman Hogan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You contract out most of the services to the service providers out in the communities.
We contract for aging. We contract out with the area agencies on aging.
Like Coastal Area Action Authority.
Well, like the area agencies on aging, not the Action Authority.
So you just do the aging.
Yes.
What's Family Connections? Explain that to me.
Sure. And Gay Smith was unable to come today, but she said she'd be happy to come and talk to you all. I think she'd probably be better able to talk to you all about their services. But
Yeah, and you do the aging through the RDCs also? Do you work with them?
we work with the AAAs, the area agencies on aging.
Okay. But the Family Connections, do you have any information on that at all?
I can provide you with their information.
Thank you.
Gay
you, madam.
Smith will be speaking tomorrow
Okay.
too as well, so if you'll hang on to those questions for her,
Thank you.
Chairman Hogan. Okay, let's see. Next we have Chairman Benton. Oh, wait, let me see, I might have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, on the section on, for the Family Connection, where the deduction is made, it reflects changing the allocation from 50 to 48. Didn't we just make the change up to 50 for the 21 budget? And if so, were they told not to spend that money from the very beginning, or how? I'm just asking. Didn't we just up their allotment?
It was not increased last year. However, we did adjust their contracts to take the reduction in October.
Okay. Could you tell me when that addition was made to get it up to 50?
I believe it was state fiscal year 19.
Okay. I guess I'm not remembering right. I slept since then, so.
Representative Henson.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions, and thank you for your report. The first one, when you talk about your turnover and vacancy lapse, I've heard from other departments that any new hires have to be are sitting on the governor's desk and have to be approved by the governor. How do you address that? Because instead of you're handling it a little differently than other departments are. Are you able to just bring these folks in and do your new hires also sit on the governor's desk for approval?
The Office of Planning and Budget instituted a strategic hiring practice, and so we are sending hires through them before we begin the recruiting process. However, they're coming back in a matter of days.
Thank you.
We have not had a negative impact from that.
Okay, and then one other question, you're probably going to defer it until tomorrow, but in terms of the Family Planning Connection Partnership, how much are we losing in federal dollars by cutting the match?
Gay Smith is better able to answer that for you.
That's what I thought, but I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to check. It
Yes,
was on my list.
appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just to talk a little bit about SNAP, particularly right now, how long is it taking for the department to process renewal and eligibility for SNAP right now?
Director Rawlings, that's part of DFAC,
Okay.
so Director Rawlings
Sorry.
would be better able
Okay.
to answer that.
Okay, we'll hang on
Okay.
to that question then for that as well. Are there any, oh, we've got another one. Let's see. That is Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What was the impact of the cuts to the Georgia Memory Net?
So that contract is a $4.12 million contract. We took a 4% cut. Emory took 4% off of $4,020,000, and we retained $100,000 for some of our administrative costs. So we took the reduction of 4% on that as well. We spoke to the Emory team about that. It should not impact their core services. It will, they anticipate taking it in some of their administrative functions that they do behind the scenes.
How much did you say y'all took for administrative cost?
We took 100,000 of the 4.12.
Okay, and as far as administration is concerned, could you tell me what that 100,000 gets or buys?
From us?
Uh-huh.
Yes. That includes IT consultation, as well as we have staff that are managing that contract from our side with them.
Okay.
Okay, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the report. On the child support services piece, it's a $1.2 million cut. What would be, you got 67 vacant child support service agents. Are those vacant spots that you were saying that will lap over, or?
So that's the 67 is really the equivalent of the 1.2. That is, there's no intent to hold any positions vacant. That would still be the vacancy lapse.
So is this statewide or just
Yes,
in?
yes, it is statewide. All of these vacancy lapse are statewide.
Okay. One other question, going to the contractual piece, if you, Madam Chair.
Certainly.
Okay. The IT contractual services that you are $880,000. What is that? You know, is that equipment or is that services, or just explain that part?
So it's a combination of several things, but a large piece of it has to do with, we have in the past contracted out quite a bit of our IT work to consultants, and this reflects us bringing that in-house and having our internal team do that rather than having consultants do that.
So you won't have to give up any kind of security?
Oh, no. No, we would not do
Okay,
that.
all right, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Well, if not, thank you for your careful work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Okay, and next we will hear from Director Rawlings, the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services. I'm sorry.
May I proceed?
We're ready for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Tom Rawlings, Director of the Division of Family and Children's Services, here to present the amended budget recommendations for 20. And we'll go through these. They should be sort of in line with your tracking sheet. First budget cut is not the page I'm looking at. Sorry. First adjustment is in adoptions. We have a overall adoptions budget of about $103 million. Much of that work, actually much of those funds go to adoption assistance. We are taking a small reduction equivalent to essentially one full-time employee, $40,095. In child welfare services also, we are looking at hopefully getting to the point of being able to soon exit our Kenny A consent decree. That consent decree has been in place for 15 years and has required us to pay out a good bit of money in attorney fees and consulting expenses to, for the federal monitors and such. And we anticipate we can take a reduction in that based upon what we've actually spent. But again, we are making extremely good progress on that, and we have really accomplished a majority of the tasks that the federal court is requiring us to accomplish. Next is replacing $249,000 in state general funds with really some one-time kinship funds, as I don't think Cliff, would, my CFO here, would mind me calling it a what do you call it? A swap-a-rama. We're basically using some federal funds and are able to cut the state funds. So it's no harm, no foul, just moving some funds around. On the next one is reducing funds for foster parent recruitment, marketing, and outreach by $250,000. Basically, we're not buying ads and billboards as much. I think we'll be okay there. In the next one, reducing $456,000 from for 6 vacant supervisor mentor positions. This is 6 vacant slots out of 62 total supervisor mentor positions. On the next page, reducing 30 vacant positions, only nine of which are in the field, 21 of which are at the state level, saves about $2.1 million. As you're at our joint presentation last week, I emphasized that we are hiring continually at the front line. And if you look at our recent years hiring, we've actually increased significantly the number of frontline caseworkers and line supervisors. We needed to do that because we had lost a lot of those due to turnover. We have really sped up our hiring process. And in Fulton and DeKalb right now, we actually have 100% of our budgeted foster care workers, and we're fairly close on the CPS workers in Fulton and DeKalb, which of course is our largest 2 jurisdictions. We still, of course, working to hire folks especially for rural Georgia. It's a little bit harder to do that in a tight economy, but I do think we'll be able to continue to hire as needed on those particular positions. The next one is 6 vacant foster care support services positions will be eliminated. That's 6 out of a total of 44 such positions. The next one is one that I'm sure that our partners will be a little, I think, disappointed in. We have a wonderful relationship with MAC, the Multi-Agency Alliance for Children. They have been doing some work around education for us. We're having to cut some of that work, as well as some other educational support work. That's $970,000. Next is a $2.4 million cut, and we were using essentially TANF dollars to participate in a statewide transportation program. Our participation in that program was fairly minimal. And so we realized that that was an underutilized resource, and we could shift those funds to other areas. Next, again, in child welfare services, there's a travel expense cut associated with those vacant positions. In DFACS administration, we are doing essentially what Commissioner Crittenden said. We have some vacancies from time to time at the state administrative level, and we'll be able to realize some savings from the lapses while we are hiring. In FEBS, Federal Eligibility Benefit Services, we are able to reduce some funds that were not being utilized or were not necessarily for our Gateway Integrated Eligibility System project, so we're able to save those funds. The next one, again in FEBS, is not a budget reduction. It is simply acknowledging that we were in a situation where we needed to bring the right from the start Medicaid unit, which had been housed at the Department of Community Health, about 220 workers. We brought them back into our fold, and so we now have them. And so we actually now, just for y'all's information, we are cross-training RSM and ABD, age, blind, and disabled Medicaid folks. We're doing more to make sure folks are cross-trained to do SNAP and Medicaid, for example. We have about 1,885 caseworkers to do eligibility benefits at this point. The one that it may seem as you look at a budget cut and you say, well, I think some folks tend to say, well, if you're cutting the budget, that must not be good. But I think this, in a way, is a realization of a good outcome. We came to here last year, the amended 19 budget, right, and asked for $10 million additional in out-of-home care funds. This year we're asking you there's a recommendation to cut that by $6.69 million. Why? Because over the last 18 months to really since March of 18, we have reduced our foster care population by about 2,000. And I believe we are doing it in a way that is keeping children safe. We are simply working harder to look for alternatives, including relatives who will take children in, including services that we can use in the community and that sort of thing. And then finally, a very small cut in some, support for needy families is $30,000, just some very small adjustment there. I think that's my presentation. Whoops, I'm sorry, there we go. And I think if you were interested, I'll be happy to, share this chart with you. It just kind of shows you the trend line on our in our child welfare, our investigations and foster care numbers and such. Be happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
We'll start with Representative Oliver.
Some of the materials I've been given show that there's a dramatically significant difference between Georgia's graduation of foster care children from high school and national average. I want you to tell me if this is true, that 65% of foster care children nationally graduate from high school, but only 18% of foster care children in Georgia. Do you think that's true?
I don't think that's accurate. So what we have done, and this is one of the things that MAC has really helped us with.
That's where I'm going.
Right. So what we have found when MAC dug into the figures.
And how much are you cutting MAC first?
I'm not sure. The cut's 500,000. So, but one of the things they have done for us, and this was an initiative Bobby Cagle put in. We have always heard, and I think it's conventional wisdom that the foster care graduation rates are very low, and I think I've heard at one time 11%. What we actually find is that I would say in the 50% range, 50 to 55%, from what I understand, do graduate, but they may not graduate before leaving foster care or before turning 18, essentially. Because they have been delayed somewhat in their education. So the work that MAC did in terms of not only helping us with that, and we continue to prioritize education for children in foster care, but the work MAC did has helped us really to dig into those numbers by going out and talking to young people who are either in extended foster care or who had been in foster care and actually finding out where they stood. We've also improved some of our data analysis in terms of, at one point, the Shine system was not updating the age of the child at times.
What concerns, I'm trying to figure out, your big concern about educational success of foster care children is what I think is one of our biggest responsibilities.
Yes, ma'am.
And as we focus our attention budget on the older teenagers that are struggling the most, that's where I'm worried about your budget. And so the MAC cut really makes me nervous because they were helping and they were improving that education. The other thing that makes me nervous is the 6 vacant positions on the mentor positions. You said that's only 10%, but we've been adding money to that workforce for the purpose of helping you with your turnover rate and with support of the frontline caseworkers.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's what concerns me, those two things about your cuts. Tell me what concerns you the most.
I think the way I am, I'm going to work within the constraints I have. The thing that scares me the most, honestly, is if we have a serious economic downturn next year and we get caught flat-footed. I mean, that's really what worries me. It worries me because it means that our workload will increase. So one of the reasons that I think it's probably a good idea to be cautious in this budget is because we don't want to get caught in a situation where we have to slash. But
what I'm worried about is what the hardships are for our older teenagers, foster care children that are not making progress, and this budget may really impact them.
So if you look at our total out-of-home care budget, Representative Oliver, it's $393 million. I think that given some of the work that we're doing, Mary Havocks, who some of you know is our Deputy Director for Child Welfare, and one of the sort of the principle I've been following for the last year has been, let's make sure we have lots of frontline staff, and let's make sure their workload is as simple as possible. So we have, and Mary has really led the fight on this and working with everybody from frontline staff all the way to the state office folks in terms of asking our frontline staff, what are we making you do that's just wasting time? And so I believe that as we continue to do that work, as we focus on the core mission, and that means, of course, children who have been maltreated. And as we are also developing a couple of different options in our intake center. One of the things we're doing is working, we're currently in the process of getting a program together, a bid together to have someone come in and integrate data from Department of Public Health, Department of Community Supervision, education, parole, that kind of thing, which will actually give us a lot more information up front and which will cut down on that workload and help us to triage these cases better. The second part of it is that when we get cases in that don't involve an allegation of maltreatment, but do involve a family with help who needs help, we don't need to be simply either doing stuff on those cases and then sort of spinning our wheels for a while, because that's a lot of extra work for our folks. Neither do we need to be simply screening those cases out. We are working right now to develop a better warm handoff to like a 211 system or to GCAL or into other partners so that we can make sure we are working with those organizations that help families. And of course, the final part of that is our State of Hope program, where we've been able to use some funds already to fund about 15 different organizations around the state that are helping us keep kids out of foster care. And we also have about 120 more that are sort of what we call our ecosystem. We're working with them. And so the more that we work with other agencies, the more efficient we can become, and the better use we can make of the money that we do have, understanding that budgets are always going to be a constraint. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Got a couple of questions. On the first page under Child Welfare Services,
Yes, sir.
you deleted the state general funds of $249,000 for kinship care and replaced them with a one-time federal, is that a grant or?
Yes, sir. It's a federal grant we got.
Did we get that just to take care of that 249,000?
I believe it was fortuitous. I
All
think
right,
it just the
happened just in
timing was
time,
wonderful.
huh? Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right. On the second page, under Child Welfare Services, did that block grant just happen to be fortuitous too? It came along?
The 970 or which?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So what we were funding the MAC work through TANF.
Okay.
And of course, TANF is part of a very large $329 million block grant. And so we often use TANF dollars to support our child welfare activity, our child welfare services.
Okay.
But we essentially needed to use those funds to shift to cover other things other than this particular work.
Okay. Can I ask one more? Madam
Yes, sir.
Chair?
I'm sorry.
Certainly.
On the last page, next to last page,
Yes, sir.
on that federally eligible benefit services,
Okay.
you said that you were able to do nearly the $5 million because you weren't using it. Can I ask why?
Why weren't we using
Uh-huh.
it? Okay. So, as you may be familiar with, Gateway is the integrated eligibility system that the state has been building for a number of years now. Okay. It is, I believe, primarily paid for by, it's like 90% Medicaid, federal Medicaid dollars, and 10% state funds. We had allocated in the budget some state funds to support the implementation of that work in the last year, and those funds, we simply didn't need to spend them. We were able to not use those funds.
Okay. One more, Madam Chair. Yes. Out-of-home care.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell me what the foster population is right now?
Under 18, 12,580 as of yesterday. And over 18, we have children or young people in care from 18 to 21. It's about 685.
Okay. And you say that was down?
Yes, sir. In March of 18, the under 18 population had reached about 14,885, I believe. So it's down significantly.
Would you attribute that to the opioid epidemic?
No, sir. I know a lot of folks talk about opioids as a reason for the spike. Because if you go back in time, we're down where we were about 4 years ago.
We spiked pretty good.
It spiked, and part of it was that I believe part of it was that we put in a centralized intake system in October 2013, and that's really when the numbers started going up, and I think we were capturing a lot more. And there's also, I think, a bit of a centralization of decision making. So my view on foster care workers or child protective workers is that most of the time, if they have the option, if they are able to find a service to keep that child in that community and out of formal foster care, they want to do that. I mean, we're not talking about children who've been physically abused. We're talking about the typical neglect case. But what we were perhaps not doing at the state level was working with them to find those local solutions. And then, of course, making sure that when they made a decision, whether it was to bring a child into care or to place a child with a relative or to keep the child in the community somehow, backing our frontline workers up. So the traditional rule has been that if you're a frontline worker and you're scared about making a decision, the easiest thing to do, pull that child into foster care. But it's not necessarily the best thing for the child. So I think that has had a lot to do with it. In terms of the opioid crisis, I think opioids have been a major issue. I think they are maybe peaking now. Meth remains one of our big issues.
Okay. Could you tell me how many kids we have out there that are in kinship care?
I can tell you that, not exact numbers with me today, I can get that later. I can tell you that in terms of, so we have two different types of kinship care. We have our kinship foster care, which means they're they're not in foster home, they're staying with relatives, and we're paying them about $695 a month usually to take care of those children. We got about a third of the children in foster care are in that kind of setup. And I can get you the numbers of children who are in what we call voluntary kinship placements. I don't have that on me today, and I'm sorry. That would be a good piece of data to have. But I'll get you that.
Okay. If we have these kids that are in kinship care instead of in, well, when I was part of that study group several years ago, we found that a lot of people didn't want to qualify for foster care because they really didn't want people coming in their home. They just took the kids. Is there a great deal of money difference in those people that are, let's say I have my grandkids in with me, but I don't want to be classified as
So there's two ways, Representative, you could have your grandchildren, okay? One would be that you become a licensed foster care and we pay you the entire daily rate.
Okay.
Number two is you could be a relative care provider with the child in state custody, and we got workers coming out and checking on them and stuff like that. And we would pay you about 91% of that daily rate. The third part, and this is where we are actually focusing our attention right now for some program improvement. We are looking at ways, you could perhaps get a little bit of TANF dollars. I think it's about $167 a month for that child. There are, of course, if you're a grandparent, there's a DHS actually has a grandparental supplement, but it's not a lot of money. Depending on your income, you may qualify for some other benefits for the children. We would like to get to the point where even if a child is not in formal custody, that we're able to pay some kind of stipend for the child and also help the family with child care.
Okay. The reason I was asking so many questions about the kinship care is since we'd cut that budget and we used that federal funds, it looks like maybe we could have used a little bit of that money to go with that federal grant. Could we not have done that? I worry about these people out there that you've got grandparents that are looking after 2 or 3 grandchildren, and all of a sudden one of the grandparents dies, and then they're sucking wind because they've lost half the Social Security and nowhere to go.
Fortunately, we have not only our kinship work, but we also have DHS's kinship grandparents. What's it actually called?
It's a grandparent supplement.
Grandparent supplement. It's got a name, and I can't remember right now. And we also have. I don't know if y'all were able to sit through the judicial budget, but I believe that y'all have provided through the judiciary some significant grants for Georgia Legal Services to help them provide lawyers for grandparents and other relatives who are taking care of their grandchildren. So that's been a help. So there are a lot of other sources, not simply in here.
All right. Appreciate your answers. Appreciate all y'all do.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Representative Howard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a question. I got a concern.
Yes, sir.
And since we back in 2008, 9, 10, on up until I think maybe 15, we were cutting what we were calling cutting to the bone.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
To the marrow. I mean, we were in the committee meetings and cutting like money that we knew it was going to hurt because the money wasn't there. And here we are now having to cut again, and we were getting calls from our constituents because they couldn't get through to anyone. The frontline workers were overworked and couldn't, in defense of those workers, just couldn't get back to our constituents. So constituents began to call us. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question, are we headed back into that same posture with all these cuts?
No, sir. I don't think we are. I mean, I think the work that we're doing to so we have the centralized intake call system now, and I think the wait time on that is actually pretty short. I can't remember exactly how long it is. We also are working. I think we have 1,900 frontline child welfare workers, and we are, of course, as we work to reduce their workload, so that they're not overwhelmed. I think that they're able to provide better customer service. But I was at Representative, I was at the head of the Office of Child Advocate back then, and I remember those cuts. They were drastic.
Yeah.
And so my belief is that we will manage our work within the limits we have, and especially given the uncertainty of the future economy, I would rather be cautious now and manage with what we have and learn how to do with what we have than get into a situation like we were back then where everybody was, crying. I mean, just about because we didn't have the money coming in. We just, we saw it every month. The revenue just kept dropping and dropping and dropping.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Reeves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Rollins, I just want to say thank you for your leadership, and I can't speak for everybody up here, but I think I can almost speak for everybody up here by, if not everyone, by saying that you give us a lot of confidence. Your presentation and understanding how you work with these are obviously not easy things, and we all know that, but your approach to this, you give me a lot of confidence that you are going to lead this agency this year, et cetera, in the future, despite these. And I just want to thank you for your leadership.
Yeah. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, I want to join in that gratitude. We do
you.
appreciate all the work you're doing. I know you're also very interested in IT and in the whole IT world of
yes,
trying
ma'am.
to figure out how we can maximize the data potential to help expedite
Yes, ma'am.
services in a very appropriate way. And so to that, are there any updates that you have, additional updates?
Sure.
to
Let me
some of the work
tell
you're
you
doing?
what we're looking at now, and I believe we're going to have maybe some federal assistance in doing this. I know that right now we are actively in the process of building. I don't know, maybe a portal is what you'd call it. And what we'll be able to do, and this may require some quick legislative fixes or policy fixes, and it's going to require some data agreements that we're in the process of getting, that kind of thing. But so when a call comes in, I want to know is our workers are having to go out with very little information. They get a call, child's being hurt, we need to go help. But if we can, when we get that call, consolidate something about the child's birth record. Who was the child born to? Where was the child born? Is there a daddy listed on the birth certificate? Is that address associated with a current probation or parole case? If so, we probably already have probation officers who have been out to see that family. They can tell us something about them. Certainly, has anyone been in prison? Has anyone been on the Sex Offender Registration Board? And we're doing that now, but the way we're doing it is a little slow. And so there are a number of things that we want to pull in to be able to search that name. Also, of course, pull in somewhat automatically whether they're on Medicaid, whether they're receiving food stamps, et cetera. And so I'm very confident this project, which has taken me longer than I had hoped, but is coming to fruition. I believe it's going to be a great boon to us. Another couple of things that we're really looking at that I think is next on my priority list is just some automation of the work that our folks do. So to give you an example, when we send out a service authorization, we can build fairly inexpensively a system where it goes out automatically and it comes back into the system automatically. The other thing we're doing, which I'm very, very excited about in conjunction with Attorney General Carr, is we have been really working with him to require that our SAG attorneys or the court upload all of the orders to our Shine system. And so once they're uploaded, actually the court can look at them, our attorneys can look at them, the defense attorney can, the guardian ad litem, the CASA, and we have all this stuff in one place. So we know what's happening with the court. So IT and IT advances are going to really make our work simpler, and it's just one of my biggest priorities for that reason.
Well, I thank you for that, and I hope that as we move forward, we'll be able to find ways to help you do that, because it could certainly expedite the services and make them more appropriate
Yes,
as you
ma'am.
do that. To that, though, also, and I know that you may not be there, but you may have a general sense of it, are you seeing particular areas in our state where there are more need for services, or where these positions seem to be more increased that we're leaving vacant? What
So,
does that play out?
and maybe because I'm from rural Georgia, I just automatically turn this. But I think, the efforts that y'all have made as a General Assembly to support rural Georgia in the past few years have been well marked. The services that we, trying to find good providers out especially in, I would say, in southwest Georgia, south central Georgia, is often a struggle. And the more that we can develop a true statewide network, the more likely we are to be able to keep a child near his or her own home. And that's whether that child is in my system, is a child with behavioral health issues or developmental disabilities. The more we can provide a wider network across the state of services for children, the better off the children will be.
Well, thank you for that. But as we look at these cuts, I know it's easy to sort of think about sort of a broad brush to them. And I want to make sure if there are particular places within the state that we really need to focus and intensify our appropriations, that we are aware of that as we move forward. And that will probably be more in the next round of the budget cycle as well. But just help us do that. Help us
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that appropriately.
Certainly will. And be glad to talk to you about that. You and I have worked very well together on these things, and I look forward to continuing that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the challenging work you're doing.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
I know you've got a large number of your team members here that are out there on the front lines every day, so thank you.
Well, there's one I do want to introduce, just make sure you haven't, if you met him, Kevin Harris. Many of you, I don't know if you've met Kevin. He's our new legislative liaison. He took Walter's place because Walter ran off to the Secretary of State's office. So thank y'all very much.
We look forward to working with Kevin. Thank you. Okay, and so now we're going to move in the posture of listening to some of our public comment. And what I'd like to do is tell you who's up and who's up next, and then we'll try to move through that pretty well here. If anyone has not signed up that is in the room and wants to, we could put perhaps another sheet just at the corner here. So if you missed the sign up or didn't call, we're going to do public comment tomorrow as well. There's so many issues that fall into what we're trying to listen to and take care of. So if tomorrow's a better day, that's also going to be a possibility. So we'll start off first with David Tatum, and then the next person that would be up would be Sheila Hubberstone, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm David Tatum with,
There we go.
I'm David Tatum with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Since 2008, Children's has owned and operated the Marcus Autism Center. On the first day of the legislative session, we provided each of y'all with a data sheet of the number of kids from your particular district that came into our system for visits and service and what they came for. And included in that are the number of children the Marcus Autism Center saw from y'all's district and how many visits they generated. We have enjoyed a very positive working relationship with the Department of Behavioral Health for many years. And they have had a contract in place with the Marcus Autism Center to provide services to Medicaid patients that Medicaid did not pay for the services Marcus provides. That contract over the past several years has grown to about $6 million a year. It is the largest source of revenue for the Marcus Autism Center. Unfortunately, the budget proposals from the administration take that amount and reduce it by a total of $2 million. $1 million in state funds, and there is a dollar-for-dollar federal match in this program, so the total reduction is $2 million, which is almost a third of that contract. The stated reason in the caption for that is that Medicaid now pays for some of the services that the contract heretofore paid for. That is not quite accurate. Although Medicaid has started paying for many things in autism treatment that it did not pay for previously, it still does not cover the intensive day treatment programs at the Marcus Autism Center. There is literally no code Medicaid recognizes for those programs. There is no way to bill for it. The programs in specific that are affected are the language and learning program, in which we actually teach a child how to talk and communicate, and another is the severe behavior program, where children have become so violent they are dangers to themselves or their families, and the Marcus staff has to suit up like a major league catcher to deal with them and help those patients and those families learn how to cope, remain calm, and become more appropriate. It is our request that some of those funds be restored. Of the $1 million in state dollars, about $250,000 was on the table, and we're still in discussions with the department for the Marcus Autism Center to do some training for them in crisis management in the autism realm. What we are looking for is $750,000 of the $1 million cut to be restored, because that's treatment money. That's direct care to patients. With the dollar-for-dollar federal match, that would restore $1.5 million of the $2 million cut, and we'll work on the other directly with the department. I know that the department did not speak today, but my understanding was today was public comment, so I went ahead and signed up. I feel like I'm a little ahead of myself, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Howard.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So where do you say these kids are? Are these kids or adults with autism?
They're children.
Okay.
The
So up to what age?
Usually the Marcus Autism Center can identify and diagnose now in the neighborhood of 2 to 3, but we're working on that, and I'll tell you in a moment. And we go all the way up to 21.
Okay. So where are these kids from? What
All over the state.
All over. So the parents have to bring them here?
That's correct.
Do y'all provide places for them to stay?
We don't have places to stay on campus, but we have relationships with places that we can help them find opportunities to find lodging and housing.
Yeah, okay.
Matter of fact, I will mention that one of the research issues that are going on at Marcus is pretty important. We attracted a guy from Yale named Ami Klin. He has developed an eye tracking device, which is an FDA approval. And you put the child in almost like a car seat type device, and you show them things on a video screen, and sensors track where their eye movements are. And this is very elementary, but essentially if they look at objects rather than looking at the people that are on these videos, then they may have an issue somewhere on the autism spectrum. And he's developed an algorithm that can identify that. And again, it's in FDA trials that hope to be released soon. But we believe we can identify someone as young as 6 months of age that we can intervene with at that age. And as Dr. Klin is wont to say, and I do a terrible job imitating his accent, is if we can teach a child to talk, it will make an incredible difference in their life. And I've seen it, and I personally believe in that.
Well, thank you for your work.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, I thank you for that today. If you feel like, from the presentations tomorrow, if you feel like you need to give us any more information, feel free.
Well, Elizabeth handed out a
We've
document which
got it.
illustrates our
We do.
request, also indicates the consequences in terms of the kids we would not be able to treat and the layoffs we'd have to occur in professional staff. Because we operated at the beginning of the state fiscal year as if it was going to be a full $6 million contract. This was a little bit of a surprise after we had already set up and budgeted and planned for it, just with a third of it disappearing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Sheila Humberstone, and I believe
Dr. Law.
Dr. Lund. And following this will be John McCain.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Madam Chair. My name is Sheila Humberstone with Stonebridge Consulting. I'm here in front of you today on behalf of Emory's Brain Health Center, and specifically the Georgia MemoryNet project. For most of you have heard me ad nauseum talk about Alzheimer's issues over the last 10 years. It's something I'm wildly passionate about, and this program is something that I am really proud to be a part of. Frankly, Georgia's leading the way in terms of Alzheimer's diagnosis and treatment, and ultimately, Dr. Law is going to tell you in a few minutes, that's going to make a really meaningful difference once we get some of these FDA drugs approved, which we hope will come sooner than later. But as a reminder, the Georgia MemoryNet project began our pilot implementation in 2017, and we have five memory assessment clinics that have stood up: Augusta, Columbus, Atlanta, Macon, and Albany. We've been able to have the hospital communities and different academic institutions work together with different medical record systems, with different philosophies, and come together and jointly work on treating Alzheimer's in this state. What you've got in front of you that is sort of making its way around is last year's sort of state of the state of the program. And in order to conserve resources, even before we knew we had to, we decided this year, instead of reprinting everything, is to just do an insert, which would give you some of the most up-to-date information about the program. In it, you'll see that we had 476 patient visits, with 160 community service referrals, and that for those of you that are mostly interested in economic development, we are leveraging the employment of over 50 individuals with this program around the state. You can tell my passion, and certainly we had hoped beyond all hope that now that we've sort of gotten close to perfecting standing up these memory assessment clinics, we were hoping that the economy would be such that we would be coming to you asking for an expansion, because we'd really like to see these clinics an hour to 2 hours away from every person that needs them. So that's the need. The need of Georgia is growing in the field of Alzheimer's. We've got an aging population, and the numbers of people that are going to put a demand on our system are only growing. But that's not where we are. I'm not asking for more. Unfortunately, today we're here to discuss the cuts. So in the supplemental budget, you'll see line item 28.7.5, and that's $164,800 cut for this fiscal year. I want to acknowledge the tremendous work that DHS has done, particularly the commissioner and her office. We worked together to make sure that we retained and we preserved the core functions of those memory assessment clinics. We also wanted to make sure that we preserved as much as we could the ability to retain and obtain really powerful data that's going to help us and you in the future make decisions about this program. And thirdly, we couldn't touch our IT dollars, in large part because patient healthcare data is not something that we can shortchange. That's just the way it is. So where did we end up with cuts? We had to cut back on our contracts. So in addition to the great partners that we have with the other hospital systems and the other academic medical centers, we have a wonderful partnership with the Rosalind Carter Center for Caregiving and with the Alzheimer's Association. So we've had to cut both of those projects back, particularly in terms of person-to-person training, moving more to a digital platform. And you'll hear me say this a lot, but digital training and virtual training is great, but there's nothing like doing training in person. That's why we're all here today. I mean, there's people watching online, but we're here because it's important sometimes to be face-to-face, and to have the best collaboration, it occurs face-to-face. We did have to cut 4 personnel positions, 4 FTEs, out of our main budget, and those 2 of those individuals now are sort of doing the work of the extra folks. And so that's great that we were able to have somebody do more, but it certainly changes the efficiency of how that person works if she's doing 2 jobs. And I'd actually be remiss without talking about Rebecca Dillard, our fearless leader on this project, who I'm going to do a poor job of explaining our program instead of her, but she's at home with strep throat, and we thought, particularly as healthcare providers, that we needed to lead by example and not bring somebody in who might infect everybody. So secondary, next on the list in terms of the cuts, we had to reduce the memory assessment clinic travel, and that's important because oftentimes our clinic staff will go down and do some one-on-one trainings with their staff, and also invite them up to Emory to sort of get some real-life training. So again, we're having to move more to digital and virtual training. That works well, other than the fact that we've also had to cut some of our communication dollars, as well as some of our digital, I think it's filed under digital illustration, and that's the part of the project that would actually help build some of the online training. So it's a little bit even worse than just doing digital. Even our digital had to be cut. So we've cut a bit of personnel. I will tell you that Emory is very used to being in a grant-funded environment, and they have done a tremendous job of going out. And this is sort of in respect to a comment that I got earlier this week or last week. We've done a great job of trying to go out and find private dollars to help supplement what we're doing, because we don't want to only rely on you all. And we're doing that, but the need just continues to increase. And so those grant dollars aren't going to fill the holes that we're creating here today. So the net impact, particularly on this, is going to impact our outreach. When we started these memory assessment clinics, you know, when you're trying something out, you try it out with your friends and family first, right? Because if it doesn't go well, then it's not quite as embarrassing. So that's what we did. We started these clinics, and we had our first patients as people that were already in the healthcare system, that already had established relationships with these clinicians. And then as we perfected our process, we moved further and further out into that healthcare system. We're now wonderfully at the space where we wanted to sort of go live with the general public and make sure that people really knew that these clinics were out there. But when we have to cut digital training, when we have to cut their money for outreach, then it really hamstrings our ability to grow. And we're at that perfect point where we're ready to see more patients. So the net impact is it's going to impact our outreach, which is certainly going to impact the growth of the number of patients that we see. We think it's important to continue to collect the data, because when I presented this project idea to you guys a few years ago, we talked a lot about how early and accurate diagnosis is ultimately going to save money in the emergency rooms, in the hospital setting, and in the long-term care setting. And we think it's important to continue to collect that CMS data so that we can prove that to you all. We'll still be getting that data, but at a lot slower pace, so we won't have as much real-time information. And we won't be as efficient. So certainly when people are doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people, then it's hard to keep the quality up. Not saying that we won't do our best, but it means there'll be a little slower turnaround on a lot of our projects. So on behalf of Emory, and I can speak with the permission of the Alzheimer's Association, as well as the families and the caregivers that we serve, we would like to ask for you all's consideration of a restoration of that funding. I would like to introduce Dr. Law, who is far better than I at explaining Alzheimer's, who is the clinical core at Emory and the director of the memory clinic at Emory, and he is a standout physician and just a better project lead on this. So, Dr. Law.
Madam Chair, members, thank you for allowing us to come and visit with you for a few minutes. I'm here basically because I wanted to support whatever Sheila tells me to support. and to demonstrate my commitment to the Georgia Memory Net and the outstanding opportunity that state funding for this project has really given us to lead the nation. And I quite literally mean lead the nation in developing a system that will provide better care for patients and families. And that is a critical need right now. We all know, I don't think there's a person in this room that hasn't been touched in some way, shape, or form by Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, not a one. And so we know the burden that is borne by the tens and hundreds of thousands of individuals in this state and their families who are dealing with this disease. And they are in desperate need of the kinds of support throughout the state, the best care that we can currently provide. And that's what we're working to do. And that's what we're going to build. We still have a ways to go. We've made a lot of progress, but we still have a ways to go to perfect the system. You can't train all of the people that you need overnight, but we've been doing that. And there has been tremendous passion around the state for this project. But there's one other thing I wanted to bring up, since I knew I was going to be here, and that is to point out to this committee and to other interested parties, just to kind of remind you, we are at a critical juncture. In fact, we are at a point where there is going to be tremendous disruption in this area. Somebody said that in 2020, the single most important decision that the FDA will face is whether or not to approve a drug called aducanumab, which, if approved, would turn out to be the first drug ever approved and demonstrated the ability to slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease, to actually slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease. And if that drug comes online today, tomorrow, next month, we have to have an infrastructure in place that will allow us to take advantage of that, which means that we have to be able to recognize this disease, diagnose it much earlier in order to deploy these treatments at a time when it's possible that the treatments will help. If we're delaying recognition and diagnosis of patients by several years, the drug is meaningless. And so we're at a point in the Georgia Memory Net project where we think we need to expand the access. Once we roll out public advertising, we think the demand is just going to skyrocket, and the current memory assessment clinics won't be able to hold up. And I think we also need to keep in mind that the deployment of this system right now will put the state of Georgia in a position to take advantage of advances that are coming in the next couple of years, which I promise you, even if that 2020 drug doesn't wind up being the one, I promise you within the next several years, one of these drugs will in fact have that impact. So we need to be in a position to take advantage. This state, the assembly and the governor has put us in a position to take advantage. And so maybe not this year, but next year, the year after, I hope that that you all will support the continued growth and expansion of this really important project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Thank you both for the work you're doing and the advocacy that you are so much a part of. So next will be John McCain, and then Donna Davidson will be up.
So my name is John McCain. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Easter Seals Southern Georgia. My colleague Donna Davidson in North Georgia Easter Seals were unable to make it here today. So I want to start by thanking you for the previous and current support for the Family Support Program. It's the definition of a program that makes a little go a long way. The more than 6,000 Georgians who are on a waiting list for a Medicaid waiver for services, or the thousands more who are not on a waiting list but have a loved one with a disability, this funding, which is capped at no more than $3,000 per family, can mean the difference between being able to keep a loved one at home or having to house them away from family. The Easter Seals Southern Georgia assists around 2,000 families over 62 southern Georgia counties with this funding at an average of $1,000 each. By having access to these funds, families of people still in school can purchase summer camp through organizations such as the YMCA, which allow caregivers to stay employed over the summer. It also allows the families of people past school age to purchase community access services, which not only allows for better socialization, but can also assist with the caregiver's employment as well. It allows them to purchase crucial medical supplies, such as adult diapers and nutritional supplements. It is the funder of last resort. It allows families to obtain supplies, recreation, socialization, and respite care that is not covered via waiver or insurance. And some of the services we have funded in the past include $2,500 for a year of physical therapy for a child with cerebral palsy, or a year of nutritional supplements for a tube-fed child, $1,800 for a year's supply of catheters for a child with spina bifida, $500 for a week of summer camp for a child with autism, $250 for 1 month of social skill therapy, or $100 for travel reimbursement for specialized medical care. And without the funding from this program, none of that would have been possible. Put simply, family support dollars allow families to be the primary caregivers for people with special needs, reducing or eliminating the need for much more expensive services outside the home. It also helps people stay employed at a time when most employers are finding it difficult to attract and retain their staff. So next year they're looking at some cuts to this program. I would say that's penny wise and pound foolish. I think that this is a net positive for Georgians, including the taxpayers of Georgia. If we have to reduce this level of support, if, for example, they aren't able to buy their diapers, they are going to use more emergency services. They may not lose their jobs, but they may have to reduce their hours in order to take the place of the summer camps and of the respite. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Are there any questions from the committee? Thank you for reminding us about the good work that you do.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. So next, Juanita Stedman. I'm sorry, when the other person wasn't here, I forgot to warn you. And then after that, is Gwen Skinner here? I don't see Gwen. Emily Ecker.
Actually, if you don't mind, Chairwoman, I'm going to let Emily and Sally go before I do, so I can
Okay.
wrap them up if that works.
That'll be great. So Emily Acker and Sally Buchanan?
Yes.
Is that who? Okay. So we'll have this one.
And I'll sit with you and Sally.
That sounds good. Get that, yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm grateful for the time to share with you. My name is Emily Acker. I serve as CEO of Hillside, an organization that has been serving Georgia's children for over 131 years. We serve children ages 6 to 21 in the custody of DFACS and children in parental custody from all types of socioeconomic backgrounds. We provide psychiatric residential treatment, treatment foster care, intensive in-home services, and day treatment. When a child is in DFACS custody and requires out-of-home placement in foster care, the child is referred to us by a DFACS case manager by emailing a universal application. Occasionally, we need some other assessments or information in order to make an appropriate match with the foster family, and if we have the appropriate foster family, we do so. We are a small foster care program, but we receive about 30 referrals every week. We also treat children in DFACS custody in our psychiatric residential treatment facility. With the approval of DFACS case managers, we sometimes refer children from PRTF, or psychiatric residential treatment, into our foster homes when there is a need and an appropriate match. Having worked with the child while in residential care, we have a good idea of the type of home and school settings they may need to thrive. This leads me to my very important point. The children who require intensive psychiatric treatment in our residential treatment facility are discharging from these highly structured and intensive services into child placing agencies and child caring institutions at an extremely rapid rate. Over the past few years, the length of stay at Hillside's residential program has dropped from 120 days to about 45 days today. Psychiatric residential treatment length of stay has decreased not because we have learned to miraculously cure trauma and mental illness, but because Medicaid funding is not authorizing longer lengths of stay in this setting. Now, I have many concerns about the length of stay, but my point in sharing this with you today is to make you aware that many children with high-end behavioral and mental health needs are placed in out-of-home care and into agencies who still do not receive a per-day rate that covers its costs. You have heard my colleagues and I for many years state that the per diem rates do not cover costs. Private providers serve over 60% of children in state custody, and for many, the state reimbursement only covers about 75% of the costs to care for a child. This means private providers must raise as much as 25% of their operating budget each year just to make up the shortfall. Fundraising should be reserved for expanding and enhancing programs to meet the intensive needs of children, not to cover the basic necessities. Therefore, it is my request that we consider any DFACS out-of-home funding cuts extremely carefully, because first, CCI and CPA rates do not currently cover the cost of care, and second, because children in these placements are challenged with very intensive needs, often not being addressed at higher, more appropriate levels of care. Now, I welcome any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? I think we know how hard you're working and
Thank you.
appreciate you so very much. Yes, and so, okay, so I think they wanted to do this together.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Sally Buchanan, and I am the founder and the CEO of Creative Community Services. And our agency has been working with DFACS for almost 37 years. One of the things that I'm here to talk about is a little bit of a carryover from what Emily was just talking about, and that is that we are actually have a need for a model of care called therapeutic foster care. We had this model in 2007 and prior, and it was actually a model that worked really well. Now that we have the Families First Act that's coming down from the federal government, that is one of the things that the feds are actually saying to states is that they are asking them to please consider using therapeutic foster care as one of their models of care for this continuum of care. One of the things that happens is the children, as Emily said, are stepping down from your PRTFs, your psychiatric residential treatment facilities. We're also going to be having qualified mental health programs. And one of the things that will, treatment programs, and one of the things that will happen is those kids come back into a CPA, which is what Creative Community Services, as well as other agencies. We have been choosing to do at CCS and other agencies to use the model for therapeutic foster care, mainly because of the outcomes that we have seen prior to 2007 and what we've seen since that time. The difference in therapeutic foster care is that you have a caseworker that works with kids that only 8 cases. The child is the only child in most cases in the home. The child receives behavior intervention programs and a lot of oversight and 24/7 oversight and supervision and on-call. The thing that's, these children are the children that are the most in need. They are, again, the ones that step down from your psychiatric residential treatment facilities, and they are coming back into the community. So our ask is just that we look at that as part of the model. It's one of the things that we've been talking with Tom Rollins about using this as one of the models to help the children come back into the community.
Thank you so much. Representative Oliver.
Are you saying that the therapeutic foster care homes where there was basically one child and a home with extra funding is no longer funded?
That's correct.
When was that eliminated?
Back in 2007, when we did the unbundling, it actually, basically what was done in 2007, and to quote the...
So what is offered now instead of that therapeutic foster care model?
They have a specialized, but what it is there is set rates that for the agency, and then you can increase on your foster parent rate to a certain amount.
So
However,
that means that there are special funding rates for special needs children?
but
Yes or no?
nothing that meets what the needs are for those kids.
But you're still does provide some services to one child in one foster home? Yes
We
or
do
no?
because we do the fundraising for it. Other agencies have gotten to the point where they cannot do this
So
model
it still exists?
with me, but I'm limited.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
What still exists and what doesn't exist at all? They're not paying you as much, they're not making it as easy for you to receive the extra funding for therapeutic foster care, but it still exists. Is that a fair, short, simple subject?
They're actually give us some special funding to work with our behavior intervention program. However, other agencies used to do this, which is what there's such a great need. We have to turn kids down. And so that's the agency rate is very limited on what we can do.
So somebody in DFACS will follow up with me as to exactly how many.
Absolutely.
What I think of as therapeutic foster care, intensive services, but in a home and not in a group
Not
home
in a
and
facility,
not in a
correct.
facility.
Yes.
So somebody's going to explain that to me.
Right.
Thank you.
And thank you.
And if y'all want to get a better, more detailed explanation and send it to Michael, that'll be great too, and we can get it.
And we
to
will, and we'll
everyone.
provide that electronically. I'm Juanita
Great.
Stedman. Any other questions, Chairwoman, for Sally?
I don't see any right
Thank
now.
you. All right, I'm an old judge, so we just start talking and we don't wait for other people, so I apologize for that. I'm Juanita Stedman. I'm the Executive Director of Together Georgia. I was a judge for 16 years, and a lot of people scratch their head and wonder why I would take this job. Well, you just saw 2 reasons I took this job. And that is because I have the opportunity to work with providers who are taking the most difficult children who need care in the state of Georgia. And I appreciate everything that all of you do. I know many of you up there, I know your hearts, and I know your belief in the work that we do. I appreciate what the governor is doing with foster care, and I appreciate what the lieutenant governor is doing. Spent last week reviewing the lieutenant governor's foster care bill with him, with his office, going back and forth and looking at that bill and how we'll do things. What I would say is this: as you are looking at cuts, both in out-of-home care and the cuts that you're going to hear about tomorrow from DBHDD, those cuts directly impact these children. And those cuts impact these children because these are the difficult children to place. They're what we call high-end children. They're the children with the mental health needs. They're the children who will duly diagnose. They're the children that are difficult to place. And they're the children that will need more wrap and more care when they are placed with their families. We are working with the Department of Family and Children's Services. I think Tom, who I think is in here, would tell you that we have a good relationship with them. We're working to be a partner, but we also just want to make sure you understand those children are there. And what I believe is this: I believe those children will become greater because the number of children that are not going to be placed into foster care, are not going to be placed into CCIs, community group homes, those children will be able to remain at home with preventative services, which you will have to look at funding to make sure that they have those services. Then the children that are going to be placed are going to be the children that have more needs and higher needs and need more. They're our children. I say all the time, we own them. They're the state of Georgia's children, and many of you, when I've come in your office, heard me say this, and I believe this. We pay for them now or we pay for them later, because if we do not take care of these children, they become human trafficking victims, they become homeless, or they go to prison. And all of those things cost our state money. So thank you for what you did. We'll provide some documents to you and your committee chairwoman, and you know how grateful I am for the work that this committee does, all of you do. So thank you. Any questions?
We do have some. Representative Reeves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Judge Stedman, and so everybody on the committee knows Judge Stedman is a very, very special person to me. We go back. I've known her my entire career.
I raised him in the
And
courthouse.
she, I referred to her as my courthouse mom back in my Cobb County prosecutor days. But thank you for everything that you do up here, for your passion and all of the things that you help pull together.
Thank you.
For us. And we, this committee, everything you just talked about, we need you and your input as we, we've got, taking the circumstances that we're at, we have a very delicate needle to thread. And some of the things that you're talking about are directly in the eye of that piece of thread that we've got to put through. And we need your help and your resources, and we appreciate that as we do the best that we can to get to the best place that we can. So thank you.
Representative, other than when Georgia plays Georgia Tech, I will always help you. So,
and that's another long inside story.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Not seeing any, I want to say thank you too, because
Thank you.
the work that you are all doing is so very important. It's very real and very genuine, and I just don't assume that we know the answers, but we need your help to get there.
We'll
Your
provide those
wisdom
things to Michael so they
matters.
can electronically be provided. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think next up is Allison Evans. She's not here. Okay, Shelley, Miss Shelley, can you come join us? Okay, we've got her. Whenever you are ready, I think I've got that mic working.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon.
I hope that you all can hear me. To the committee members, thank you once again for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Shelley Simmons. I'm the Executive Director for the Statewide Independent Living Council. We are a policy-driven entity, and we try to work closely with our legislature and other state agencies and stakeholders to help create policy change for individuals with disabilities. Michael is passing out some information for you. I just, first of all, want to thank the committee for your generosity. Over the last couple of years, you have allowed funding for center expansion throughout the state. Inside your packet there, you will see where we have been able to expand. In the southwest region of the state, we've been able to cover 14 counties with $200,000. And last year, money was appropriated for the southeast part of the state, $147,000 for 9 counties. And in fact, that office will be opening up. In fact, the grand opening is today in Jessup, the city of Jessup in Wayne County. Is going to be housed in the Goodyear building there. So we're very excited about the opportunity. But to go back just a little bit, with the Bainbridge Center in the southwest part of the state, of course, last year when I came to you, I informed you that things were a little slow getting off the ground. However, we have been able to have 390 information and referral calls come in. We're working with 21 individuals so far. And these numbers are not accurate. This was taken after the last year report. So they're probably about 6 months that should be added to that. And it's not there, so they're probably lower than what they actually are. But what the center has been able to do through those additional 14 counties is provide home access, modifications, assistive technology assistance, systems advocacy, and also transition services. So they've been making their rounds, making great strides in covering these 14 counties. And of course, you know those counties are pretty rural, so it takes a little time to really make an impact in each one of them. Again, we're excited about what's happening in Jessup County. That's attached to life. And so we're just hoping that funding will continue for these centers, because and these centers are state funded, these satellite offices, I should say, the partially shaded areas are completely state funded. Our money is funneled through the GVRA or the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. So we're really hoping that we won't be a part of that, some of the cuts there, because again, those centers, those satellite offices would completely close down, affecting 23 counties. So I'm just hoping that you will consider maintaining that money, and this is probably inappropriate, but if there are any crumbs, we would like to continue with our center expansion to cover the rest of the state. And there's also a map inside of your packet that shows what we're trying to do, because the white area that's on the map currently does not have center coverage. So we're really trying to fill in the rest of the state. This committee has been, again, very generous and doing a small rollout every year. So we're really hoping that that can continue. Also, at the end of the presentation there is information on how you can actually view one of our videos that talks about independent living. And it's probably about 8 minutes long, so at your convenience, I would greatly appreciate if you look at it. It interviews some of our staff from across the state and also some of the consumers that they work with. I can tell you about the stories, but I cannot relay their sentiment. So I think if you saw those, you would really understand and appreciate some of the work that the Centers for Independent Living do. Thank you. I could answer any questions if you have
Thank
them.
you. Do we have any questions or comments? Well, I will just say thank you, and thank you for giving us that excellent information. Appreciate the
Thank you
work
very
that you do every single day.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Victoria Salzman. And after Victoria will be Jamie Kelly. Possibly Ariana Foster with her, if they're here, I bet, together.
Was not able to make it.
Okay, so first will be Victoria Salzman, and then, are y'all together? Are y'all, okay, great. If y'all want the table, if you'd rather do that, whichever,
What's your preference?
whichever you're comfortable with.
Yes, okay. We'll move to the table.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman and representatives. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Victoria Salzman with the Multi-Agency Alliance for Children, or MAC. And I understand I'm a little ahead of the game, but I'm here to ask that the state restore funds for next year's budget. $1 million for the cut to the Education Service Delivery Pilot, or MAC LEADS. It provides education and graduation for support for youth in foster care, and it's found in line item 2023 relating to TANF funds. LEADS was developed in response to poor graduation rates. Now in its third year, over 1,700 youth have been served, and participants have a 75% graduation rate, higher than the national average for young people in foster care. And what's more is that 36% of last year's graduating class is enrolled in college. This is especially notable because 90% of the LEAD students come into the program at more than one grade level behind, both in reading and in math. The funds you are asking for support 500 students in high school at roughly $5,000 a year, with a significant portion going towards tutoring. As a public school parent with a child with a learning disability, this is far below the cost to support education. We've been judicious with our funding, leveraging technical assistance, private dollars, community partners, and community resources whenever possible. The Northwestern study estimates that high school dropouts cost the community $300,000 over their lifetime. Calculating for the MAC LEADS class of 2019 alone, that's a future savings of over $9.3 million. This has been an effective pilot because of the intense focus on education and any barriers surrounding it. Students get individualized supports tailored to what they need to be able to be successful. including addressing barriers outside of the classroom, such as placement stability, and supporting connections to the community and school, which strengthens incentives and motivation to do well. Education and foster care. It's a crucial intersection for our young people, and let me emphasize, these are our young people. High school graduation and success is vital to their trajectory for successful adulthood. This is a program that works and will only get better. Thank you for your consideration. Ariana?
Good afternoon. Move just a little closer to the microphone. Okay, you might want to pull it up closer to you so we make sure everybody hears it.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to start off by saying thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Ariana Foster, and I'm a sophomore at Clayton State University. I am also an honors student, a Hope Scholar, and an Auroral Scholar. I am thankful to be a part of Max Leads program because after going to 12 different high schools, I still was able to obtain my high school diploma. I was assigned a mentor through the Leads program who helped me fill out college applications, paid for my senior fees, helped me get my financial aid situated, and pretty much prepared me for my college journey. Thank you. Any questions?
Do we have any questions or comments? Oh, we do. Let's see, Representative Mathiak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Victoria, you said 500 students and your budget's 5,000? Is that, did I?
$5,000 per student.
Per student, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, I will say thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for your presence to be here today and to inspire us. It's so important always for each of us to put a face with a project. So thank you so much, and best wishes to you as you continue.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I believe we have one more person signed up, Wayne Drummond. And either wherever you would like to be, the podium or the mic. Okay, great. There isn't anybody on this sheet. And I'll correct that we may have one more. We're checking the sheets just to make sure. Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Wayne Drummond. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Professional Human Services Association. We're an organization of 2,100 persons across the state who work in the Department of Human Services or Family and Children Services. Our mission is to support those staff and to try to support them in doing an excellent job on behalf of Georgia's citizens. I'd like to first thank you as a group for the improvements over the past several years in supporting foster parents, assuring reasonable caseloads for people that do child welfare work, the addition last year of adult protective services staff, better automated systems. All of those improvements that relate to fiscal matters started with this committee, and I appreciate your sensitivity to those issues and the provision of resources. I'm very also grateful for the leadership of our stable and competent leadership in both Human Services and the Division of Family and Children Services. As you know, that has not always been the case. It has provided great strength to our systems of service. Our members are members of the executive branch of government. Our job as members of the executive branch is to take the policy directives of the governor, of the General Assembly, of our leadership, and to do our dead level best to get the job done with the resources that are made available. One caveat I always put on the table is that if I say anything that causes you to want to redirect the existing budget, I would encourage you not to do that. The existing budget was developed by our departmental leadership in concert with the governor's office, and it's above my pay grade. They do an excellent job with that. But we always look for other opportunities to improve the budget if you find additional resources. My primary concern relates to changes in the federal eligibility benefits budget. What happened, basically, as I understand it, the Department of Community Health submitted a 4% cut that included transferring 220 staff from the Department of Community Health to Human Services in the Division of Family Services in that budget. The staff in that program generally have double the amount of work that they should do, and that is true both, I think, based on pre-recession performance when they had an average caseload of about 460 cases, and also a recent time study that was done to try to assess what was a reasonable workload. And they should have about 400 cases each. Presently, they have about 900 cases each, and now we have a situation where the work, 220 folks came, the work came with them that they had, and they're having to be paid out of the existing budget, which means that it's going to make it very difficult to fill positions for the federal eligibility staff, and it's going to cause additional problems. My concern about that it relates to the impact on our ability to provide services to families and children who seek help with adequate nutrition through the SNAP program or access to adequate medical care. If you have double the work that you're supposed to be able to do, you cannot respond timely and you cannot respond well. I would note that in the food stamp program, the Federal Nutrition Service does a measure of accuracy of our programs in terms of whether we're doing a good job of administering the program accurately. In federal fiscal year 2018, the Georgia food stamp error rate was 9.11%. That is the highest rate in the southeastern United States. In the past, when we've had excessive error rates, the feds have threatened to fine us $75 million. There's also a lawsuit that I believe is active related to the timely delivery of benefits that says that we should do our food stamp applications and our recertifications on a timely basis. And I believe that we run a severe risk of being out of compliance with that federal lawsuit. I believe that just from my vantage point, I've been doing this work for 47 years. Very honored to continue to do this work in this capacity. Very happy to be retired as well. But any money that is spent on providing staff resources to assure that our programs are administered accurately and in a timely manner is cost effective. If you add up the cost of litigation, the cost of potential fines, the cost of turnover, if you are not able to fund the staff to do the work, then it generally exceeds what the cost of paying the staff in the first place to do it right and on time. The consequences of that, the real and most important of those, if people who need help do not get it on time, that is what causes your constituent concerns, and I think we're in a very fragile situation, and I share the director's concern about the prospects of what will happen when we have the next recession, when we have that as an issue. Now, if you find additional funds and are able to make changes in the budget to help support and mitigate the additional loss of staff, because we got basically the 220 we're having to pay out of the existing budget, the next year's budget calls for another 105 of those folks to go away. And it's going to further put stress on the system, and they are the gatekeepers for Medicaid, which is much bigger than the food stamp issue I've described, and for food stamps. And it's going to have a dramatic impact on their ability to be an appropriate gatekeeper, ensure that the people who provide services assure that people get the help that they need on time and in the right amounts, and that people who are trying to scam the system and don't need help might be able to get better through the gate because we can't say grace over them properly. I have immense respect for you. I have immense respect for our leadership. I encourage you to do what you have done so very well, is to make a very difficult decision with very complex issues. Anything that you do, as far as our association goes, will be supported, and we will support our members in doing a good job of being good stewards of public trust and to do our dead level best to accomplish our mission of supporting the citizens of the state. And that does conclude my remarks.
Are there any questions or comments? Thank you so much for speaking to us today. And
Thanks for
sharing.
the privilege, and it's been a real wonderful privilege to witness all of this great work and improvement in our systems, and tremendous kudos to our leadership behind us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now maybe we have one more speaker, Dawn Randolph.
Thank you, Chairman Dempsey. I'm Dawn Randolph, and I represent GATES, which is the Georgia Association of Training, Employment, and Supports with People with Disabilities. These are your Goodwills, your Easter Seals, Bobby Dodd, Ring up there in North Georgia that I know Representative Donahue has been to many times. We've been to programs up there. I've been working in the field of mental health, developmental disabilities, and addictive diseases for 25 years. In '96, when I became the public policy director of AADD, which is now folded into Bobby Dodd, I've seen a lot of changes, and you all asked some good questions around the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. I have a front row seat to advocacy in this arena for 25 years. When I worked for AADD at that time, we were having a lot of issues in VR of serving people through employment. At that time, VR was inside Department of Human Resources, which so was BHDD and so many other senior programs and DFACs. It was a huge agency. In '98, we moved VR out of DHS over to DOL, thinking it was primarily focused on employment and that would be a good fit. Over the course of a decade of VR being in Department of Labor, what we found, and I know Representative Benton worked very hard with us, that the monies coming down from the federal government were being used for other purposes in Department of Labor. And at that time, you all saw the wisdom to move VR into as its own agency attached to DHS. So I want to provide that historical background because we've been struggling. It's like I feel we're Sisyphus rolling a ball up a hill only to have it roll back down every 5 to 6 years. I also feel like Don Quixote, that I just keep tilting at windmills, telling you all, we have a problem in VR. Every year I've come to you, and in 2015, you all put $900,000 of state dollars in VR, which was $4 million. Then in 2017, Representative Benton also was a big champion, put another $500,000. At my request, every time I ask and advocate, you have come through, which brought down $2 million. Last year, I said to you all, I can't ask for any more money because I am very, very frustrated that we are not getting the results in our community services, that we are not getting people into jobs, that we are not getting VR to respond. And I said, I can in good conscience ask you for more funds. And all of those monies that we've advocated for have never come out into the community. They have stayed right there in VR, and I think Executive Director Ryan really laid out what the problem is. It's stuck in the bureaucracy. Now, going back in history before my time, and I've talked to many of you about this, the providers in your communities had a line item. They had upwards of $16 million to provide direct services to get people into jobs, and they did it. But under Department of Labor, that was cut, and Governor Perdue actually got rid of the line item and made the contracts just through VR, through utilization. And we have seen year over year referrals to community programs, Goodwill, Bobby Dodd, Ring, Easter Seals go down. We are currently spent the last few months gathering data, which I'm going to share with the committee. We're still waiting for a few more providers to give information of how much that utilization has declined over the last few years. It's frustrating, and I think you all have heard me in the past. I know I've talked with Representative Donahue one-on-one that we knew there was a problem, but nobody would acknowledge it. Nobody would believe the providers were having this much of a problem. And it really saddens me that it takes a budget year like this for someone to finally listen to us. I know that we can do better. I know other states are doing better. I know because I've been around doing this work for a long time, and I know that you all can make the right decision. You all have the hardest job of any budget committee out there. This is the tough job. This is human lives. This is when you push one side of the balloon, another side pops up somewhere else. People that don't have employment end up losing their homes, they end up losing their livelihoods. So we're in desperate times, we've been in desperate times, but we finally have a director who's willing to speak truth. And I hope that you really heard him today.
Are there any comments or questions? We do have Representative Donohue.
And again, thank you. Ring is an amazing organization. You know, I think when we first started, we painted a picture of a lot of the corruption that we have. But then what happens is we're trying to correct that. But this lady, our chairman up here, is passionate about what she does, and I'm blessed to be on this committee. And I apologize, he was saying he had a cold. Well, I've got apparently something starting up. But, you know, the rest of the committees do a pretty darn good job. And with that, what I would want to see is us create the best environment for whatever we're trying to accomplish. And again, I commend you and appreciate your words and your testimony, and it's always a pleasure to sit here and listen. But thank you.
I join Representative Donohue with that gratitude. Thank you. You have certainly been in the trenches on this and many issues for a long time, and I thank you for your support of helping us embrace the opportunity that I think we now have today, and giving Director Ryan the time to step into that and to come forward with more information. And I think we're going to start a brand new day of actually delivering better services as they were intended to be.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. Thank you. Okay. I believe that is our last speaker for today. We'll be back tomorrow, have more hearings, and also offer more time again for public comment if there's anyone who would like to add to that list. Thank you all for being with us. This adjourns our meeting.